I don't know why you would use that. I think that this is an excellent lens. Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. My name is Emma and professionally I'm a software developer, but in my free time I love landscape photography and making related videos on YouTube. Today I am going to do kind of a spontaneous video. I love when I can do a little bit more spontaneous video, and I'm going to unbox some lights that I just got to set up in the studio, and I'm going to show you how I set them up and use them in here for a little bit of new lighting. Now, you saw in the studio video that I put out last week, I mentioned that I was planning to get some new lights, but my current lighting setup is a ring light that's to the left of me and a big reflector that's to my right, and it's just sat on a chair here. What my new setup is going to be is two lights that'll give me a little bit more control over coloring and positioning the light than using the reflector. Be a little easier. So I'm going to grab those boxes, bring them in, and we're going to unpack this stuff and get it set up. Alright, so I have two boxes here, big boxes. This is not entirely lighting stuff, as there's some other random stuff I ordered here, as well as a couple of plant stands for this room as well, which are going to be a lot of what's in these packages. But I'm going to unpack these, figure out where the lights are, and get them set up. Also, you're probably going to hear the audio is going to be a little different. We've switched to natural light because I've got the curtain open right now. So, you know, just since I'm not in my usual setup, some of those things are going to be a little bit less than perfect. And so it just kind of gives you an idea, I guess, of how kind of everything in the room wraps around my typical YouTube setup, just to really give it the most optimal situation as possible for filming those videos. First box. Second box. There we go. Let's see. That looks like a plant shelf and nothing else. So light should be in this one. Air bubbles. That is, oh, that's a spike rack. That's for the kitchen. RGB LED video lighting with tripod, new, made in China. That's what I was looking for. And there's another plant stand down there. A couple other things. Okay, here's the lights. All right, so you can actually see the reflector set up behind me here, and so you can tell why it's just not really optimal. It gets a little bit in the way there. And so I bought these lights. These are pretty cheap lights. I have no idea what the brand of these is. They're not like a name brand or anything. They're just like cheap lights off of Amazon. I figure they should work fine. A light is pretty much a light. And at the moment, it's like a sheet of tin foil over here. So, you know, anything would be an improvement. But I don't want to spend tons of money on really expensive lights because I just don't really see a need to for what I'm doing. And there should be two lights and I believe two stands for them in here. I think I spent like $45 on the pair. Light stands all feel pretty cheap. I haven't encountered a light stand yet that felt really solid. This feels about the same as usual. I assume this is a light. Got a little, oh, it came with a USB power brick. That's pretty nice, because these are USB powered. Don't have to supply your own brick. We got a little ball joint thingy here. So if you want to put that on top of the light stand so you can tilt your light around. We've got some diffuser sheet things. I don't know what those are called besides diffuser sheet things. There's probably an official name. And the light panel. So these are, I mean, it's nothing fancy, right? It's just some LEDs on a circuit board with a little plastic case around it. USB powered. You got controls on the cord and on the remote. So yeah, just a very basic light. But you know, to get all this stuff for $45, I'm pretty happy as long as it seems to light me okay. They don't need to be fancy, they just need to create light. So I think I will unbox this the rest of the way, find a good place to plug it in, and then we'll see how it works. Alright, so back here again, just behind my whole backdrop and teleprompter setup, and I've got power here running from this outlet. I just ran an extension cord out and attached it to the base of the tripod here, and so that kind of gives me power in the center of the room. There's a cord there that I can actually use to power the camera while I'm recording, and so I've unplugged the ring light from here, and I'm just going to add these two lights on there. So those fit in there nicely, gives me my 3 USB plugs there, and that way there's less cords running across the floor that I can trip over. There's just the one cord and the backdrop stand over there, which I do trip over all the time, but it's a little better this way. Yeah, I'll go ahead and put these on the ball heads so I can rotate them around just to get them facing the right way easily. Let's trash out of here. Okay, so I just want to show you guys as well, while I'm setting this up, how I actually light my YouTube videos as far as the actual positioning of lighting and so forth. So what I like is a 3-light setup. In the past I've done it with this ring light and the reflector. Now I'm going to do it with 3 actual lights. But what that is kind of a brighter light to one side of me. That's always been this light. And then a dimmer light on the other side of me, the reflector, which I'm now replacing with a dim actual light. And what that does is it just makes one side of my face kind of brighter and the other darker, which casts a little bit of a shadow across my face. That adds a little bit of depth to my appearance. And then the 3rd light is in the background behind the monitors. On the back of them is colored LED strips. I can change those to different colors, which I think is kind of fun, and that provides a little bit of interest and depth in the background, adds a little bit of color and light back there, but you know, keeps everything nice and simple as well. So let's see what this setup is going to look like with the new lights. So here's the ring light that I've been using. I'm going to get it out of here, and I'm actually just going to sit it up next to the desk. That's where hopefully it's going to go in the future. Power it on. Oh, that is bright. All right, very nice. I do want it to be bright, I guess, but it was right in my eyes. I was not ready. Wow, I really have spots in my eyes. We can do a red. This is flickering. There's a flickering mode, flashing. I don't know why you would use that. That's annoying. I can use these plus minus arrows to change the tone so I can make it warmer or cooler. With having two lights, I could see if I maybe wanted to make one side a little bit warmer or cooler and the other side, you know, be different. But usually what I do is just kind of leave the light on a cooler setting and kind of let the camera's white balance, then make any color adjustments that I might want to make, as well as adjusting it in post later on. But usually I just stick with a cooler light because that usually is going to be the most direct representation of the color. We can get this reflector out of here. It's bulky. Make sure my camera's still recording too. I noticed just now as well, these actually have two sets of LEDs on the board. And so there's RGB ones, which give you your different colors. And then there's also white and gold ones that give you your white light and your temperature hue. The RGB lights, I've noticed, don't get quite as bright as those regular pure white ones, not just in these, but in other lights that I have. And so that's something that nicer like smart bulbs and things do, is separating out those different LEDs, actually using different sets for them. So pretty fancy actually that they put something like that in this cheap of a light setup. Here's the overall positioning lighting setup. So you got this one right here. I might move it forward and back a little bit just to adjust it. That's going to be kind of filling in some of the shadows. That's going to affect how the shadows look on my face. And then this light over here is going to be really doing most of the lighting of my face, and it's going to be the one casting the shadows. So if I move it around, that'll kind of adjust where the shadows are, and then this will adjust kind of how much I fill those shadows back in so that I don't have super dark shadows, but get kind of a little bit more even look that way. The other thing that I have to watch out for, because I have glasses, is I have to watch out for the reflection in my glasses. I know some people find that to be distracting when they're watching the video. And if I put a light straight on me, that's going to make a lot of reflection. So that's why using lights that are off to the side is really helpful, because then they don't reflect on my glasses. All right, so I took a quick break and just returned my studio to its normal setup, with the exception of the light. What you're seeing right now is just with natural light. It's probably a little bit dark because the camera's ISO is set kind of low. I like to try to keep a low ISO in videos to, you know, prevent any grain. And the natural light is not super bright right now because it's evening and it's starting to get a little bit darker outside. So I don't shoot with natural light, partly for that reason, that it is really hard to control the natural light and get really consistent natural light. I like to have a consistent look in my video, and with using the window for the lighting, it's dependent on the time of day. I am not a real scheduled person, so I don't want to have to try to film a video at the time of day when the light is right in here. I like to be able to just film a video whenever I want. The other reason for that is there's a really big window in here, which I love, except that when I'm recording audio, a ton of sound is bouncing off of that hard glass and creating reverberations in here. I don't really like that so much. And so I usually keep that closed up with the heavy blind that I showed you in my studio setup video, if you haven't seen that. So that I'm going to close up here so that we get a bit better sound and a better representation of what this room is going to look like without the lights to start off. Okay, so now that window is closed up, I actually can hear, I don't know if you can tell as much in the video, but I can hear a difference in here when I'm talking, of that blind being open or closed. But now it's super dark in here, you probably can't really see me, and so I'm going to turn these other lights on. Now, one thing I've noticed about them is they turn on to max brightness, and just a default setting every time you turn them on. So when I turn them on, I'm going to have to adjust them, and so I'm just going to try to remember and actually probably write down how I set them so that I can do that easily each time. But right now they're at max brightness. I don't want either of them at max brightness, so I'm gonna go ahead and turn both of them down here. I'm gonna give that a try. Okay, and I've also turned off the third light that's behind me, just so you can see without that as well. And what I'm going to try to do is use the lights to adjust until I get the right exposure on my face, because this is the ISO shutter and aperture that I want to use in my videos. I don't really want to change that. I have it set to a preset. It's what I like to use for the look that I want and everything. So I'm going to try to fit the lighting to the settings that I want. So I'm going to take a look on the camera. I'll have to walk back and forth a little bit to adjust these and get everything the way I want it. Alright, so looking at my first test shot, I still feel like it's actually brighter than it needs to be. I'm going to turn this down a little bit more, and let's see how that looks. Alright, so at this point, I think I'm relatively happy with the brightness levels of these. I may adjust them a little bit more, but I think I probably like it. Now, one thing that I might do is change the tone of them. So this one, I think plus makes it a bit bluer. Yeah, so I might make that just a little bit bluer, because it looked a bit yellow to me. And that may adjust the brightness a little bit. I'm not really sure. The other thing I can do here, which might also affect the brightness, is put one of these little diffusers onto it. And that's going to make it a little less harsh. I think that might improve the look. And then the other thing that I can do is turn this desk light behind me back on. So that's kind of giving a little bit of a backlight back there. Should add a little interest to the background, adds a little color, adds a little bit of light back there so that it's not super grainy behind me, all of those things. So I'm going to check that out and make sure that these two lights still look good with that setup. Alright, I think I've come to an acceptable solution. So let me just show you guys what I have now. So I've got that there, that one I'm kind of considering the key light. That's the brightest one, shining on the right side of my face. Then shining in the other way, I put this ring light here, just kind of parallel with the edge of the desk. That's shining on the left side of my face, filling that pesky shadow that I had there. And then the other new light right here, it's actually fairly close to where I have the camera, and it's relatively bright, filling in the center of my face, since this other light right here is really shining primarily on the side of my face. So with those three lights set up, I think I have a little bit more even light, and I've been able to get the reflector out of the way. So at this point, I've spent, I don't know, probably at least an hour just messing around with the angles of these lights and so forth. And so I'm really just starting to overthink it, and it's all blurring together and so forth. But I think I've come up with a solution that I'm pretty okay with to get the reflector out of here. I actually was kind of surprised how hard it was to get these set up the way that I wanted, and I really thought that using two lights over a light and the reflector would kind of make an improvement. And actually, I'm not quite sure that I like it as much as with the reflector. The reflector gave me a little bit more even lighting on that side. So I'm really not sure if I like this setup quite as much, except that this way the reflector is out of the way. So I guess you guys will have to let me know what you think of this lighting setup. Again, these were really cheap lights. I only spent like $45. I know there are much nicer lights out there, big, setups, soft boxes and all of that. So definitely not trying to say, this is the best lighting setup or whatever. You can make suggestions to me in the comments, especially if you know anything kind of cheap that's really good. But I don't feel like spending a lot on the lights right now. Just that's not really that fun to me, I guess. But anyways, yeah, kind of a nice little cheap lighting setup for $45 here. Got a couple more lights in. It made kind of a more permanent solution in this room that I don't have to move around. I can just leave them there, turn them on, turn them off So I'm going to write down what all of the settings on them are so that I can remember, and that'll make it pretty easy to just turn everything on and start recording in here. One thing I do wish that they had is if they would remember the last setting that they were on, then I'd be able to put them on a smart plug and have them just automatically turn on for me. But at the price point, didn't really expect to be able to get that. So I think that is all for now. I'm gonna get some dinner and I'll get this video edited and put out there for you guys. I do have some exciting stuff coming up. I was gonna film a what's in my camera bag video and then decided to do this instead because I'm thinking about adding a little something to my camera bag. So stay tuned for that, hopefully in the future. I'm pretty excited to share some new things with you guys. So hopefully you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to hit the like button, leave me a comment, subscribe to the channel if you haven't so that you don't miss any future videos that I'm really excited to share with you guys. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.